Quote, Harlem by Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore, and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? End quote. Hello, this is the Happy Hermit here to talk to you about books, literature, and everything else under the sun. And no, we're not specifically talking about Langston Hughes today, but Lorraine Hansberry's seminal play, A Raisin in the Sun, which is referring to Hughes's poem. People forget the title of Hughes's poem, thinking of it as a dream deferred, but he's calling it Harlem pointedly, because by the 1950s, Harlem was becoming something of a fading dream. The Harlem Renaissance was supposed to do a lot of things for Black America between the world wars. It was a blooming of culture with some of the best literature, drama, and art of the 20th century. And while things certainly weren't equal in America then, Harlem represented a safer space that allowed this sort of expression. And there was a hope that creating beautiful things and creating a beautiful society would spread, and along with it, equality. And it was beautiful, but the Depression came, and with it insecurity, and the artists scattered to the winds, and a riot in 1935. None of these things ended the Harlem Renaissance, meaning there wasn't a day that closed the book. It just slowly dried up, like a raisin in the sun. And by the 1950s, it was firmly in the rear view. However, in the 1950s, there was a new movement with roots in Chicago that I argue almost eclipses the Harlem Renaissance, with strong ties to the civil rights movement and black theater. If the Harlem Renaissance was a failed utopia, this would rise like a phoenix from its ashes into something much longer lasting and greater in scope. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get started with the back of book description. Quote, first produced in 1959, A Raisin in the Sun was awarded the New York Drama Critics Circle Award and hailed as a watershed in American drama. Not only a pioneering work by an African-American playwright, Lorraine Hansberry's play was also a radically new representation of Black life, resolutely authentic, fiercely unsentimental, and unflinching in its vision of what happens to people whose dreams are constantly deferred. In her portrait of an embattled Chicago family, Hansberry anticipated issues that range from generational clashes to the civil rights and women's movements. She also posed the essential questions about identity, justice, and moral responsibility at the heart of these great struggles. The result is an American classic. End quote. A Raisin in the Sun sets one foot in the past, not only in the Harlem Renaissance, but in the high drama of a Eugene O'Neill-style play. The play opens with a younger family receiving a life insurance check for $10,000. Remember, this is $10,000 in 1950s money, which would make it more than $100,000 now, a significant amount of money, and the idea of a family having conflict over an inheritance is classic theater. How Hansberry is cutting away a lot of the theatrical pretensions that O'Neill or Tennessee Williams would have. Gone are the grand soliloquies, the heavy symbolism, the Freudian angst that flows beneath the surface of so many mid-century plays. While the characters are complex, the conflicts are direct, simple, and lines are matter-of-fact communication. While you can dig deeper into the lines if you wish, Hansberry is uninterested in having them talk in code. For example, here's a line that Mama says about her now-dead husband that's a very natural part of the conversation she's having with her daughter-in-law at home. Quote, honey, Big Walter would come in here some nights back then and slump down on that couch there and just look at the rug and look at me and look at the rug and look back at me. And I know he was down then, really down. And then, Lord, when I lost that baby, little Claude, I almost thought I was going to lose Big Walter too. Oh, that man grieved himself. He was one man to love his children. End quote. Hansberry excels at giving the audience exposition in a natural way that could happen in real life. That naturalness is part of the point here. We're not watching larger-than-life theatrical characters. We're watching real people trying to navigate real-life issues. At the opening act, we see the younger family in their run-down apartment that's too small for them, a place where its furnishings are typical and undistinguished, and their primary feature now is that they have had to accommodate the living of too many people for too many years, and they are tired. Our whole play is set here, in an environment that once had promise but is now wearing out, and has in its own way been passed down from generation to generation. But it's rented, not owned, filled with things that are worn out or secondhand. This household has 3 adults with jobs, 1 young adult in school, and 1 child. This apartment represents the life they could sustain but never could get ahead from. Keep in mind, the father didn't die all that long ago, so up until rather recently, this was the sum total of 4 working adults. To show how close to the margins they are, at the beginning they have trouble giving Travis 50 cents for school, and Travis himself is discussing getting an after-school job. In such a world where you must work that hard just to stand still, there is no room for dreaming. Now, the concept of the American dream is nebulous at best, but if we define it as having the ability to pursue the life you want, the younger family does not have access to it in the life they're living. By working as hard as they can, they're given enough to live on, and not a penny extra. Until that life insurance check comes in. Personally, if I ever suddenly got a big wad of money, I wouldn't know what to do. It's one thing to fantasy spend money in my imagination, quite another to be dealing with the real thing. I don't know how true the statistic is that most lottery winners spend all their money within a few years. It's one of those bits of common wisdom that I find suspicious because there's never any data supporting it. Yet there's some truth in it. Learning how to manage money takes as much training as learning how to function in a 9-to-5 job, and experience comes from trial and error. The first thing the very existence of this check does is awakens people's dreams. Each member of the younger family has at least one dream. Mama wants a house. Walter, the son, wants his own business and a better future for his son. Benitha, the daughter, wants to become a doctor. Ruth, the daughter-in-law and Walter's wife, wants a happy family. The thing is that these wishes are externalizations of more internal desires. Mama really wants a stable home. Walter really wants respect and community. Benitha wants independence. Ruth wants acceptance. And, outside of Ruth, the whole family has ideas of how this money will be spent, but at the end of the day, the money is Mama's. Dreams can be complicated, though. Quote, "Seem like God didn't see fit to give the black man nothing but dreams, but he did give us children to make them dreams seem worthwhile." End quote. In RAISIN, dreams are only worth anything if you can pass them on, whether it's to your children or to your people, as Benitha expresses later in the play. Pregnancy here is seen as a potent symbol of dreaming. An unborn child is both a burden and a possibility. A person dreams about what the baby will be like, but they don't typically dream of the expense, the dirty diapers, the responsibility. Dreams don't get born and provide a happily ever after. They must be nurtured, grown, invested in. Ruth's journey from considering terminating her pregnancy to having room to birth a child is the same journey the whole family goes through in one way or another, because carrying a dream is like being with child. Sooner or later, it needs to be either born or not, and Mama's check is the crucial moment where everybody has to either go for their dreams or give them up. Hansberry portrays the youngers in an idealized sort of way. They are educated, hard-working, clean-nosed, community-minded Americans. They possess all the traditional traits that we frequently pay lip service to as the deserving American worker. They keep their noses clean and follow the rules based on the belief that excellence will allow you to rise. However, they're faced with this check. For a lifetime of good and faithful service, this is what the father gets in return. Nothing for himself, and he never sees the reward for it. It's so we can see the problem of systemic racism directly. We are seeing an educated, hard-working American family with a lump sum of money who still have trouble getting ahead. White America tends to see racism only in violent extremes. Things like the KKK or segregated lunch counters come to mind, or even more recently, police brutality. And to be sure, these things are concerns, but there's the more everyday sort of racism. The youngers here have no entry to anything beyond service work. The way to get into most professions, whether it's an office job, construction, or factory work, is to have connections. Very few well-paying industries will take a chance on an outsider, particularly one without experience. Now, there's school, and perhaps you can become a professional. However, school needs to be paid for, and even if you get a full scholarship, you still need a way to house and feed yourself and go to school. Americans self-delude themselves with the myth that we have an open system, and anybody with a little gumption and hard work can get ahead. The way to be on top is to be rich, white, and connected, whose friends and family will fill all the well-paying roles around them, and who will be happy to have a bunch of hard workers with gumption drive their cars and do their errands. It makes me think of this quote from Angels in America. Quote, "The white cracker who wrote the national anthem knew what he was doing. He set the word free to a note so high nobody could reach it. That was deliberate. Nothing on earth sounds less like freedom to me." End quote. There are arguments on the right and left in America about elitism that want to find specific groups to blame, with the most conspiratorial-minded claiming one group or another is at the center of it all, pulling the strings. The truth is more prosaic. America is a set of communities that all have their respective gatekeepers, charged with allowing the right ones in and keeping the wrong kind out, and this includes everybody from Park Avenue to your local garbage collectors union. American systems are powerful systems of discrimination. Racism is one aspect of it, but discrimination is, foundationally, about keeping the wrong people out. The Younger family faced this discriminatory intent head-on when the head of an HOA approaches the family after Mama bought a house in their territory. Quote, "Well, you see, our community is made up of people who've worked hard as the dickens for years to build up that little community. They're not rich and fancy people, just hard-working, honest people who don't really have much but those little homes and a dream of the kind of community they want to raise their children in. Now, I don't say we are perfect, and there's a lot of wrong in some of the things they want, but you've got to admit that a man, right or wrong, has the right to want to have the neighborhood he lives in a certain kind of way. And at the moment, the overwhelming majority of our people out there feel that people get along better, take more of a common interest in the life of the community when they share a common background. I want you to believe me that race prejudice simply doesn't enter into it. It's a matter of the people of Clybourne Park believing, rightly or wrongly, as I say, that for the happiness of all concerned, that our Negro families are happier when they live in their own communities." End quote. If anything has changed, it's the level of explanation given. They'd be the wrong people who wouldn't fit in here if it's a job not the right fit or doesn't match the office culture. Now, the folks who say stuff like this will swear up and down that they mean well and that they really believe in these statements, but scratch below the surface and you'll find that they're justification for exclusionary behavior. To move into a neighborhood, all you should need is the money to afford it. To get a job, all you should need is the ability to perform it. Workplaces and neighborhoods are perfectly able to change their culture to accommodate others when they want to. The demand for an individual to be already part of the culture is the definition of discrimination. It means you're not allowing outsiders to contribute and adapt to your closed-in culture. Notice how the speaker is trying to distance themselves from racism, because racist exclusion is wrong, but he performs a little trick so that what they're doing isn't wrong because it's not about race, it's about culture, and the insistence that they both be happier. Keep in mind he's saying this with a straight face in a crummy apartment this family has had to live in for more than one generation, who are also hardworking and a damn sight more honest. And let me tell you, if you've ever experienced this kind of discrimination, it's as invisible to you as the smell of smoke is to a cigarette smoker. Note the word dream here, too. Mama's dream of having a house directly conflicts with the neighborhood's dream of having a restricted community. There's a certain kind of American prestige which is defined as being exclusive. It's no different than the politics of high school cliques. Those same people behave the same ways as they progress to neighborhood associations, PTAs, work groups, church boards. They make every organization into a club with a single-minded goal of keeping them away from us. This clubhouse mentality is at the base of racism and the root of most American bigotry. It's a sort of pathology where you only define yourself by what you are not, and so you fear opening up the doors. Everything about American racism is based on a poor sense of culture, that any outside influence is strong enough to erase white identity. But the reality is, it's a bubble. We're looking at neighborhoods, wealth, comfort. We're not looking at traditions, beliefs, community. We are a nation of gated communities that have no kinship, no friendship, no history or future, no trust, no faith, and no soul. And what are those outsiders supposed to do? When they're dealing with a set of little piggies determined to see you as the big bad wolf, there's no amount of explaining you can do to convince them otherwise. So the Youngers have a chance of selling the house for a profit, and probably staying where they are, or moving in anyway. Mama already said that the black communities were too expensive, and this is what was affordable. Buying in any other white community at the time would probably lead to the same conversation. Let's look at the other dreams. We've got Walter Lee, who wants to open a liquor store, which means he needs a place to lease some inventory and getting a liquor license. He's splitting the down payment with 2 friends, but one of them runs off with the money. Not only his money, but the money that was supposed to be for his sister's education. It's a terrible loss that sets up a series of growing betrayals. First, Willie betrays Walter Lee by stealing the cash. However, Walter Lee didn't just give Willie his allotted amount of money, but also the money he was supposed to be depositing for his sister's education. So he's betraying his mother and his sister. Beyond that, losing the money so quickly betrays their father. Walter Lee says it correctly, that the money is made from his father's flesh, and Mama goes even further. Quote, I seen him night after night come in and look at that rug and then look at me, the red showing in his eyes, the veins moving in his head. I seen him grow thin and old before he was 40, working and working and working like someone's old horse, killing himself, and you give it all away in a day. End quote. The thing that makes Walter Lee vulnerable in the first place is his dream. Every gambler is a dreamer, and he bet on the wrong horse. From the very beginning, there's a sneaking suspicion that Willie doesn't know what he's talking about. His plan lacks specifics. With the talk of greasing palms in Springfield, there's already an element of things not being on the level. Walter Lee's not stupid, it's his dreams that blind him. When we want something so badly, it makes us vulnerable to manipulation because we are so willing to accept things that we want to hear. Beyond that, it nails down the concept of exactly how far Walter Lee will get if he stays where he's at. Dead by 40, a payout to your family that disappears in a year, a month, or a day, that maybe will take them a half step forward and maybe it won't. The problem with being a good and faithful servant is at the end of the day, you're still a servant and there's little motivation for the world to elevate you. It's a double bind. If you try to push ahead, like buying a house in a white neighborhood, you're expecting too much. But if you stay in your lane, the world will reward you with more of the same. Beneatha is in a bind of her own. She's going to school with the aim of becoming a doctor and has 2 men courting her. The first, George, is a wealthy and educated, but also conceited snob. He's an elitist who dresses in the current American styles. Beneatha calls him an assimilationist because he's copying the manner and dress of white upper-class America.